Thanks for joining us at Right On Replicas, where we're proud to bring you the best scale model kit reviews on the planet. This review is brought to you in part by Rogers Hobby Center in Saginaw, Michigan, where the fun begins. This review covers the GMC Sonoma SLS. It's an AMT kit in 125 scale, number 1168. Now the Chevrolet S10 and its counterpart, the S15, were introduced in 81 for the 82 model year. Now later the S15 was renamed the GMC Sonoma. Now when they first came out, the Chevrolets were advertised for a monthly payment of $99. They sold millions of these little pickups, and you can still find them everywhere, doing some heavy lifting or showing off. Now this is a skill level 2 kit with 132 parts. It's molded in white, clear red, chrome, and has vinyl tires and decals. The kit was originally produced in '94, and it's had about 4 iterations since then. The current kit release in 2019 has new parts and some new decals too. It's a nice build, and it even has some custom options. When you're done, the model will measure 7.5 inches long, 3 inches high, and 2 3/4 inches wide. And just a second, that sounds like Newt trying to get in here behind the glass. He's our program director, and looks like he's got a question. Oh, come on in here, Newt. What's your question?
Boy, the color on this model really pops. Why is it so different than the box?
Well, that's a great question, Newt, and it sure is a head turner. I'd say this build is what you'd call a boulevard cruiser. The bright metallics and custom wheels reminds me of the ones that you'd see on the Dream Cruise in Detroit or every day in LA. But that's the beauty of modeling. You can do anything you want, and this subject has a lot of versatility. Here are the contents for the kit. As you can see, they're pretty crisply molded. They've been well maintained. The glass is clear. Some nice vinyl tires, and some chrome parts too, with a choice of wheels. We'll be using mostly liquid cement, sometimes super glue for fragile parts, or white glue for some of the clear parts as well. And remember to heed the manufacturer's safety and use guidelines when you use any of the products that you see or hear in the review. Here are the decals for the kit. The register is great and the colors are just beautiful. Now for the most part they go on pretty easy, but those long side stripes and the Thrasher decals for the snowboard, you might want to use some decal setting solution to get those to nestle into place. Assembly begins with the motor, so go ahead and grab these parts out of the kit. You can see that the motor and transmission are split horizontally, so we'll be putting those together next. I'm going to add these parts too because I'm going to assemble the model for good bond of the glue, and then I'll paint the whole thing all at one time. Now glue the engine halves together and add the alternator to the bracket. Then place the intake heads and valve covers on their respective places, and paint this assembly aluminum. Now if you have any trouble with the details, there are instructions at the back of this review. Now with the belt assembly, we're going to paint that flat black with aluminum pulleys and glue that into place on the front. The fan is also a semi-gloss black. So paint these parts, and we're going to add the starter, distributor, and intake, and they're all black. So after they've dried, add those to the motor, and these exhaust manifolds are painted a steel color. As you see here, I added a little flair to my engine by adding some carbon fiber decals. Those are aftermarket items, which of course is simply up to you. They're available on the market, but I'm making a kind of a show car in a sense, so I went for that and added those to the top, and I'll show you later how to make those decals. Now we're going to stage the wheels, and you get to choose. There's 2 options. You can either build them stock or premium stock, and I really didn't like either choice. So I went with aftermarket wheels, and tires from eBay is where I found them. But you can stay with the stock. They're perfectly fine. I just decided I wanted something a little different for this build, and so I can show you what can be done with things that are just a little bit different. So the wheel set that I had too much hub, so I had to trim some of it off with a razor saw. To accommodate the hub on the model, I also had to drill the hub hole out just a little bit bigger to accept the one on the model kit. So here's a comparison of the aftermarket kit that I'm using on the right and the stock hub and wheel kit that comes with the kit. It once again is simply a choice, and you can do anything you want to your model. Be forewarned, however, if you go with aftermarket parts, sometimes you have to modify them in order to fit your kit properly. You see that the rotor, the brake rotor here, the hub was also too long in order to get the wheels inside the fenders, and so I had to cut that down. You see where that line is there. Also, I wanted to make it even more realistic, so I drilled holes out of the brake rotor, and as you can see here, the completed brake rotors are finished. Now the wheels and calipers then were painted gold, and the rotor was painted a gunmetal color. And next we're going to start working on the interior, beginning with the dashboard. So gather these parts, get them ready for installation. Now paint the dash your desired color along with the steering column and the steering wheel. And then, kind of something that matches, of course, the interior or complements it. And glue the wheel to the column and the column to the dash. Next, glue the instrument cluster into place and add the decal and then the clear screen over that. So I had decided that I was going to make my truck look like some of the, around the 2000 year show trucks. So my interior was going to be all tan leather with carbon fiber accents. And here you can see by using a piece of tape and tracing out the area that I wanted for the carbon fiber template. We transfer the tape template to the carbon fiber decal and put that into position and trim it out so that it's just exactly right and looks nice. Now just install it like any other decal. And here you can see the completed dash unit with the carbon fiber in place. Now we'll work on the seats, so grab these parts from the kit and get them ready. Clean them up and glue the seat halves together, and then work on any seams that shouldn't be there with some sand sticks and putty. Now I painted my seats tan for a leather look and then added some brown and black washes to give it that aged rawhide appearance. Now locate these pieces and we'll finish the interior and paint the door cards, side inserts there, and the interior and center console, your choice of colors. I added once again some carbon fiber decals to the door cards and then the center console. I also detailed the door cards and floor mats a bit, and you can see here the completed interior, and then don't forget to add the decal to the steering wheel as a final touch. Now we can work on the frame and the suspension, and most of that front suspension with the A-arms and things are assembled already. It makes it a lot easier to put together. And so grab these parts, and continuing in the theme of a show truck, the Boulevard Cruiser, the frame was painted with a gloss black with some gold accents. Now glue the springs into place and then the steering knuckles, and watch and carefully sandwich the cross member over the springs and the steering knuckles, and then you can add your brake rotors and the steering linkage. These three parts are next. They'll have some seams on them that you'll want to clean up too and get those ready. Now I added there's some script here that was added to the frame, so it's highlighted so that you can sand that off. Now glue the manifold section to the catalytic converter and then add the bracket to the muffler and paint this assembly steel, and then install it as well as the completed engine into the frame. Make sure you remove any paint before you glue parts together or they won't stick. And now we're going to work on the rear suspension and driveline here. So the differential and axle there are painted black, as are the springs, and paint the shocks to your desired color. Glue the rear end halves together and then add the drive shaft and then put it in place and glue the springs into place. Finally the shocks as well. Now to finish off the frame we need the fuel tank and the spare tire. Now the tank gets painted steel color as well as the wheel on the spare. The tire's a rubber black, and you can also detail the tire a little more using a white gel pen and highlighting the letters like I did here. And now you can snap those tires and wheels into place as you see here, and you've got a rolling chassis. Get these parts out for the cab, and there's some choices you can make. There's some options here. So I'm going with the sportier option, and I recommend sub-assembling the body so that you can paint it all at one time. And then glue the firewall into place and add the mirrors. Now glue on your front bumper of choice and the side skirts if you want to use those, and paint the body. Now, after assembling the body, you can go over it and make sure that you remove any parting lines, with sanding films, or scrape them off. You can see here in this mock-up that test fitting is important. I found out some things about the frame horns and things for connecting the parts together that we'll talk about later, but get it all prepped and ready for paint. And now with the mock-up information that we had there, we're going to move along to the bed, and we've got some options here, just like in the front with the flare side. So we're going to add the there's two different tail lights to choose from as well. So we'll also need the tailgate and rear bumper for this step. Now put the tailgate in place, but don't glue it into position, and glue the side skirts if you're using those. And as you can see in my mock-up there, it was there's quite a gap between the bed and the cab, and this will not do for my show truck, so I needed to do something about that. And also you'll note here how the frame horns fit into the bed, and what we're going to have to do to modify that. The shaded areas here are what's holding the cab and the bed apart, so I'm going to cut these and sand those off. Then we need to keep the frame horns, so after we have shortened the frame rail, we can glue them back into place. Here you can see the frame with the horns glued back on, and the bed hooks are trimmed back to fit. As you can see here, this is a much better fit and more like a real vehicle. And then give it a couple light coats of primer. Following that, I prepped the body for paint after it had dried, and what I used was Spastic's color. It's a color shift color that goes different gradients of green, purples, number 0570. After your paint has fully cured, you can add the glass to the cab using some white glue or crystal clear, and then add the interior assembly, locating gluing points and removing any paint that's at those points to glue it. Now add the radiator, which is aluminum color, and add the grille with the headlights, and finally the logo. Now paint the bed to match the cab. You can see the tailgate is still functional here. Now you see a mock-up with the bed fit to the cab along with stock wheel selection, and there's one here also with the aftermarket set. And it's quite a difference. I think you'll agree that it gives it a totally different appearance. So now we're ready to add the body to the frame. So slide the bed over the frame horns and glue it down to the chassis on those locating points that you found when you mocked it up. Next, add the cab down over the hooks and in the bed onto the frame. Now using some white or clear glue, add the third brake light set to the back of the cab. Now these parts are still needed for final assembly of the construction portion, and the air conditioning pieces, battery, air intake, master cylinder, and they're all painted black. The washer bottle and the radiator overflow are white, and glue them all into place, and then make sure that you paint your hood the same way with the same primer and paint, and then once that's dry, you can add the hood to your model. Now here's some of those custom optional parts that I mentioned. The snowboard and boots it's a nice touch, and if you want to use those, clean them up like you would any other parts, paint them as you see fit, and then add your decals, which covers most of them anyway, so it's quite a nice touch. And likewise, whichever and any of the decals that you choose to use for your model, go ahead and place those into position. Use plenty of warm water. Once again, probably want to use some setting solution for the long side stripes and things of that nature. Here are the parts that I had left over for the kit, and as I mentioned earlier, these are the optional pieces for the wheels and the tail lights, so that's about it, along with the extra decals that I didn't use for my build as well. Well, there you have it. Your kit is complete, and even though this was a fun kit to build, actually a relatively easy kit to build, I wouldn't hesitate having a beginner try this one, as long as he knows how they function. But you can do something special with it too. With wheels and paint like this, you can make it into something that's really different. So once again, a little imagination and work can turn a very simple kit, even a curbside kit, into a real head turner and something that you'll be proud to put on your shelf. So don't be afraid to stretch your abilities a little bit and give them a try. With some practice, you can come up with something quite unique, like this beautiful build of our 95 Sonoma. And if I were you, I'd buy one and put it on my shelf. Well, we hope you like this premium step-by-step model kit review. So that you don't miss any more, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can do that by clicking on the icon in the lower right of any of our reviews, or you can find us on Facebook or our website, rightonreplicas.com. Thanks.